But the science tells us 60% for the San Joaquin. What was recommended, and we actually had a slight victory between 2013 when they were recommending starting at 35%. When they came back in 2016, they went up to 40%. So it sounds like the environmental argument persuaded them to go a little bit higher. So it would be 40% of unimpaired flow between February and June. And again, those are critical months for juvenile fish rearing and outmigration. So in 2016, which was an average water year, the blue is what the unimpaired flow was, and the red was what was actually released into the river, and black is what would have been released had there been 40% of unimpaired flow. So the delta between the red and the black is what the improvement would be in the 12 curve. There's some flexibility. The range will actually be between 30 and 50%. And it depends on if other measures can achieve goals and objectives that are being established. So what you hear from the water agencies is it's not flow, it's the fact that we've got these predator fish. That's what's going on in the upper left. A bass that's eating a juvenile salmon. We gotta, take care of the predators. We don't have enough spawning gravel because it's being held back behind the dams. So we're gonna, we're offering to add gravel to create better spawning habitat. We need to restore the riparian corridor, the area along the river, to create a food source, to create shade. It's not rejuvenating naturally because it's not being inundated. So basically, all of these ecosystem services that we get from a natural free-flowing river aren't there anymore. So we need to figure out how to intervene and manually adjust some of these things and manipulate them. Now, if we can reach the goals and objectives with less water, it could be 30% of unimpaired flow. But if it's not working at 40, it could go up to 50%. And by the way, feel free to ask any questions along the way. So, like in California, agriculture uses 80% of the developed water, the water that people take from the river. 20% comes to urban areas. It's the same breakdown on the 12. There's 2 irrigation districts, the Modesto and Turlock irrigation districts, that take of the water humans use about 80%, and they irrigate 200,000 acres of farmland, very productive farmland. And then the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission provides water to 2.7 million people in all of San Francisco, most of San Mateo County, and parts of Santa Clara and Alameda County. So we have the same breakdown on the Tuolumne as we have statewide. And there's a lot of potential for using water more efficiently in agricultural areas. Now they'll point out, it's like we've been getting more efficient over the years, and they have, but they've been expanding acreage. So the amount of net water taken out of the river has actually increased. There was a pilot project done by the South San Joaquin Water District, which is a neighbor of our two water district, the irrigation districts. And they put in a pressurized water system so that they could do things like drip irrigation and sprinklers. And what they found is that they could produce 30% more crops with 30% less water. So they don't really talk about that a whole lot because people say, hey, why aren't we doing that? Their answer is, well, it costs money to put in the pipes involved. But maybe we're at the point where we need to do that. We need to revisit some of the things. Also, there are crops that are higher value, that use less water than things like alfalfa, which is a low value crop and uses a lot of water. So maybe we need to think about the types of crops we're growing in the Central Valley.
Why did the pressurization affect yield, crop yield?
Because you're targeting where the water goes. A lot of what they do is flood irrigation, and they say it's like, well, we're not really wasting the water because it's percolating down and it's recharging the groundwater basin, and then we tap that. But there are much more efficient ways to do that. In certain years when you might want to do that, some recharge, and other years where you might not. But so drip irrigation is really concentrating it. And you can also mix in, if you use fertilizers, mix in and you're targeting that as well. So you can save money on the application of fertilizers. So something I like to point out is that in California, water is a public trust resource. That means it belongs to the people of California. And it was that public trust doctrine that won the Mono Lake case, where LA was diverting so much water from the creeks that filled Mono Lake that the level was dropping. Coyotes and other predators were able to get out onto an island and eat all the rare birds there. It had been a refuge for them. And so the way the public trust doctrine works is that, you know, the water belongs to the people of California, and the State Water Board is empowered to look at beneficial uses. You know, how should this water be used? So there are water rights, but the State Water Board does have the ability to step in and say, hey, you know, you're not using water wisely, you need it for other purposes. 20% of the, 26% of agricultural product in California is exported overseas. So you might be able to make an argument that, hey, if we subsidize farmers and we get cheaper food, that benefits all of Californians. But if we're subsidizing farmers so that they can profit by sending almonds to China and other places before the tariffs had an impact on that, maybe that's not in the public trust. So what I have been proposing is that we charge an export fee. You're exporting California's water, and then that money go into funding things like pressurized water systems, groundwater recharge, and the things that we need, but the irrigation districts don't really have the money to pay for because they're charging farmers only 20% of the cost of delivering the water. So there's not a price signal in agriculture like we have here, especially now. So we were expecting the irrigation districts to really fight hard against the Delta Water Quality Control Plan. Their economy is not very diversified. They're addicted to very cheap water. They're poorer places. We probably should all do a lot more to support agriculture. It's pretty convenient. We have agriculture so close to an urban area. You know, we can't eat computer chips, but we can eat potato chips. So, you know, we need to support them and make sure that they feel like their economy can survive. What did surprise us is just how adamantly the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission has been opposed to this plan. So the SFPUC, they, you know, got the rights to build OShaughnessy Dam, which created the Hetch Hetchy Reservoir in Yosemite over on the right back in 1913. So they're pretty old water rights. Not as old as the irrigation districts that go back to 1887. And through tunnels and pipes, that water comes to the Bay Area, and you can see the northern part of Santa Clara County receives some of that water, and Alameda County up through Hayward, and then San Francisco counties, 3.7 million people. So this is interesting. This was an agreement that the SFPUC signed with the irrigation districts. Irrigation districts, they have senior water rights, so they've kind of lorded that over San Francisco a little bit and, you know, get a lot out of San Francisco. San Francisco paid for more of their dam, Don Pedro Dam, than they did. And in exchange, they got a water bank there that I might explain in a few minutes, or maybe just pass that over. But anyway, in 1995, there was a settlement agreement over licensing of the Don Pedro Dam. And San Francisco agreed to support the irrigation district's position on fish flows. So basically, they gave up their ability to think and act in accordance with the values of San Franciscans and Palo Altans and people in Hayward, etc.
Peter?
Yeah.
Is there maybe another issue? You mentioned phase 1 and phase 2 of this whole process. There is a phase 3, right, that nobody talks about. That's literally the third rail.
The water rights.
And maybe SFPUC is looking down the road at phase 3 as well, as we got to stop this now before this boulder goes down the hill, snowballs.
Yeah, so
they hit us on phase 3.
So there was, phase 1 and phase 2 are going to be saying, you know, here's how much unimpaired flow needs to come down. And then phase 3 is like, well, where's it going to come from? So they're going to start looking at water rights. And it's not just the junior water rights holders that are going to get hit, but everyone's going to share in that. And you saw that, you know, San Francisco uses 20%, and when I say San Francisco, the Bay Area uses 20% of the developed water on the Tuolumne. So you might think it's like, okay, well, 20% of the increased flow should be their responsibility. But they have an agreement that goes back to the 60s that if the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which is in charge of licensing dams, requires higher flows, then San Francisco is responsible for 51.7%.
That's per versus water board.
Right. And so there's a question, does that apply to the water board? Now, the SFPUC, in trying to get people to oppose the plan, they always use the 51.7 figure. We use that too in our analysis, which I'll be showing you, because it's like, hey, we'll compare apples to apples. But that is a question, and they always reserve the right, there's an asterisk, so they'll present to the state water board and they'll say, look, these are the potential environmental or the economic impacts, and there'll be an asterisk that says, but we reserve the right to challenge the Raker Act. And what the state water board did in the economic analysis is they have a range of potential impacts based on whether the Raker Act or the fourth agreement applies or not, 51.7%. So that it'd be a lot easier to say, you know, what's going to happen if phase 3 came first, but didn't. So we commissioned a professional survey in May of this year to find out, well, what are the values of San Franciscans? We focused on voters in San Francisco. Sample of slightly over 400. And we found that 93% of the people conserved water during the drought. And of those, 94% said that the environment, protecting the environment, played a role in their decision. For 71%, it was a major role. So people conserve water thinking it's going to help the environment. And in truth, it didn't. Could have. It didn't. I'll explain that in a bit. There was a survey done by San Jose State University in 2006 that said that found out that benefiting the environment is the #1 motivator for people to conserve water. More than because you're asked to, because there's a drought, to have a reliable water supply. It was protecting the environment. So does water conservation benefit the environment? There is a lot of development going on all throughout the Bay Area, and in San Francisco, it's just booming. And there's an area, south of Market, a multi-block area that is going to be going through a lot of development. And you might be familiar with the flower mart there. It's a real fixture where people can come and get fall flowers. And so they're going to tear that down, and they're going to build a new building that would have 2 million square feet of office space, retail space. It'll add 8,000 new employees and no housing. So does that help with the jobs housing imbalance? No. Does it help with the housing crisis? No. Are these 8,000 new employees going to be able to outcompete families that have been in San Francisco for generations and paying rents? Yes. So very problematic. But in this, in the water supply assessment, they kind of admitted that this water that people have been conserving over the last 10 years, and they're asking them to drink mixed groundwater with drinking water, which has been controversial, and we're developing more recycled water, that we're going to be able to meet all this future demand because of that. So it's not, that 10 million gallons per day that was being conserved and alternative supplies isn't dedicated to the environment. It's to enable development. So people said, if I knew my water conservation benefited the environment, 72% said they'd be more likely to conserve water. Whereas if it just enabled development, 21%. So people aren't conserving water to add more commercial development that's going to add traffic and exacerbate the housing crisis. Groundwater. Again, it's like there was a big uproar when San Francisco announced they're going to start blending just 3% of the water was going to be groundwater. Not a problem, but people are used to hetch-hetchy water, pristine water, snow melt from Yosemite. So 3 times as many people said they'd be more likely to support that if it benefited the environment than if it just enabled more development. 97% supported protection and restoration of San Francisco Bay, and 92% supported that for the Tuolumne River, which is interesting because 75% could identify Hetch-Hetchy Reservoir as their water supply, but only 12% could identify the Tuolumne River as the source of water in Hetch-Hetchy. So we point out that if you say your water comes from Hetch-Hetchy, it's kind of like saying your food comes from Safeway. Like, it's kind of right, but there's an original source of that. So people people we surveyed learned about the Tuolumne River, and 92% said, yeah, we should protect the resort. So Plan Bay Area is it's a roadmap for development in the Bay Area that was put together by ABAG and Metropolitan Transportation Commission. They're now blended to be Bay Area Metro. And what they were looking at is, how is the Bay Area going to grow between 2010 and 2040? And they projected 2 million more people, and a lot of that's driven by the 1.3 million more jobs. So it's again jobs creating more need for housing, more demand for water, etc. And almost half of the jobs were added already by 2015, and only 13% of the housing units by 2015. So again, that trend, the jobs housing imbalance is worsening. So we asked people, like, hey, is this going to improve your quality of life or make it worse? And 11% said improve, 65% said worsen. And if you take out the no opinion and you just look at the people who did have an opinion, 85% thought Plan Bay Area would make their lives worse. So what do we do about that? Are we a democracy? It's kind of hard for elected officials to say, whoa, we got to change the way we think about development. Let's focus more on quality of life. But that's what we found. So I'm going to get into a little bit about the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, SFPUC position. But first I want to talk a little bit about water rights, demand, and storage. So the SFPUC has junior water rights, the irrigation districts have senior water rights. And what that means is for most of the year, the first 2,400 cubic feet per second, so 1 cubic foot is basically the volume of a basketball. So imagine 2,400 basketballs per second coming down the river. And that's what belongs to the irrigation districts. And then for 2 months during spring runoff, it goes up to 4,000. So anything above that belongs to the SFPUC. And you can see that in dry years, this was the driest 4-year period on record, the SFPUC is only during storms that they can capture water. So poor water rights in those years. But if you have a big water year, like 2011 or 2017, they have way, way more water than they need in a year. So that's a time, if they have storage capacity, that they can capture that. 2016 was a normal water year. And in a normal water year, they have the right to capture enough water to last 3 years. Okay, so storage is really an important component of the SFPUC water system. So again, in an average water year, they have the right to capture 3 times as much water as they need. And they have a lot of storage. People have heard of Hetch-Hetchy, but there are, I think it's 10, they maybe have 10 reservoirs, some in the Bay Area, some in the Sierra. On the Tuolumne, they can capture, and just to put this in perspective, prior to the drought kicking in, they were using about 250,000 acre feet per year. When we really conserved a lot of water in 2016, it was about 200,000 acre feet. So on the Tuolumne, 660,000 acre feet. So enough water to last more than 2.5 years. The Don Paper Water Bank, I mentioned that before, that they helped finance it to make it bigger. And what they can do is they can prepay water. So if you have a big water year or even a normal water year and the Tuolumne reservoirs are all full, they can get credit for water that they're entitled to that flows into Don Pedro, up to 570,000 acre feet. And then when you hit a dry period, they can capture water at Hetch-Hetchy that they normally wouldn't have to be able to and subtract an equal amount from the water bank. Okay, it's a pretty clever system. It's a way for them to expand their storage. They can't access that water, but they can prepay it. And then in the Bay Area, we have Crystal Springs and Calvers and some other reservoirs. So total storage, about 1.5 million acre feet. So at the height of the drought, 2015, there was enough water in storage, and this is just Tuolumne, and they normally keep the Bay Area reservoirs pretty close to full because if there's an earthquake, we want to make sure we have water close to the people, and they can fill those reservoirs with water from the Tuolumne. So at the height of the drought, we had enough water in storage to last 3 years. We weren't close to running out. There were other parts of the state that were out of water, and we still had 3 years worth. And you can see they can keep Hetch Hetchy full because of that water bank. Cherry and Eleanor, a couple other reservoirs, and then the water bank, you see they took advantage of that water they prepaid and let that drop down. So in 2012, again, the blue is, this is the beginning of the drought. The blue is unimpaired flow. The red is what was actually released, and the dotted line is that February through June, 40% unimpaired flow. So had the Bay Delta Plan been in effect, the river would have seen more water. Now, did our conservation help the river? No, because what they did is they basically released what they were required to release, and then the rest of it they captured behind dams, because you never know how long the drought's going to last. So they have a very conservative drought policy, which I'll tell you about in a minute. And so, everyone's thinking, it's like, yeah, I'm going to, capture the water in my sink. I'm going to use gray water. I'm not going to flush my toilet. I'm going to only water once a week, and because I care about the environment, but it didn't show up in the environment. So 2013, again, you see what it would have been with 40%. 2014, 2015, 2016, this was a normal water year. And in December